And where do you see the interest rates going? And are you seeing real estate slow down?
Well, it's really shocked the market. I think our internal predictions and the industry predictions was kind of seeing landing kind of where we're at in the sixes, kind of mid sixes at sometimes by the end of the year, not by summertime. We kind of expected some ticks up throughout the year, but it's been the fastest rate increase since the Carter administration. And so it's really shocked the purchase market, and of course, it's decimated the refinance market. 95% of our refinance business right now is cash out, because when people need money, they need money. But it's decimated the refinance market, and then the purchase market has really stutter stepped. And this, there's pocket markets. Not everything's the same. Not every state's the same. But man, we're finally seeing a little bit of slowdown from the multiple offers, multiple hundreds of $1,000s over listing price. All that craziness has kind of started to ebb out a little bit. But it's still, I'm telling you, like in Orange County, it's a frenzy still. There's still multiple offers. There's still $100,000 over asking price. It's really dramatic.
I keep hearing they're going to have another, 0.75% hike in July. Are you guys thinking that's not going to happen?
I think if it does, I think that's starting to get baked into mortgage rates earlier than that. Like when the Fed moves, we've already baked that in. And so we don't pop with them. We've already kind of elevated up before they really go out there. So we might tick up to the mid sixes here if they're going to pop. But in the scheme of things, I think we're kind of settled. But again, that's one man's opinion.
Can you speak a little bit to what I call the equity trap? People are in. You touched on it, where these folks have had incredible runs in the equity in their home. The fact is that whatever their rate was is less than what it is today. So to do a cash out refi, there's a consequence, because now your payments are going to go up significantly. Would you agree that a lot of people are in this equity trap?
Yes. And so it's going to be interesting what they're going to do. And it's also causing us to have a big problem with inventory. Inventory is a huge issue right now, and it's causing the pricing to jump significantly, because you can't find a house anymore, because people don't want to sell their house they have a 2% rate or a 3% rate. They have one of the best rates in the history of the United States mortgage world. And the prices are at super high, and they go, where am I going to go? Because now I sell, I get some cash, but now rates are in the sixes. Plus I'm buying into a high market. So they're not selling. What's going to happen, Ken, is they're going to take out equity lines of credit. They're going to take out second mortgages, which were very, very popular in the pre-crisis in 2008. And a home equity line of credit is effectively a credit card against your home. And it allows you to tap that equity. And now it's going to be on a variable rate and has interest-only payments, and there's lots of features to it. But you can tap that equity without touching your first. And so people are going to do the math on that and say, hey, if I want $100,000 out of my house now, to your point, Ken, if I do a full refinance, my payment's going to go to 6%. It's going to be skyrocketing. But if I just take $100,000 out on an equity line, pay that at an interest-only payment, what's the difference? What's the savings? Is this more beneficial to me? And I think you're going to see the equity line market explode in the United States right now.
Do you think that people could get in trouble with that? You know how we saw in 2008 and, people falling behind if the equity in their house lowers?
Well, here's my biggest fear, having come through the crisis in 2008 and watching what happened. And this is a different experience than that crisis, and we can unpack that too as deep as you want to go. This is radically different. But if people max out their home's equity, and if the home values go down, we're going to be looking at the same type of thing that happened in 2008, which was, my house is worth less than I owe. Why would I stay in it? And the crazy part about 2008 and the mortgage market back then was the entire industry was based on credit score, because there was waivers for documentation. And the capital markets group believe, hey, this guy has an 800 FICO score. We don't need to see his pay stubs. We don't need to see his W-2s. This person pays their bills. Well, all of a sudden now their house is upside down by $200,000, and they start to strategically default. They just go, I'm not paying anymore, and they walk away, let alone the other people that lost their jobs and had needed to sell and were upside down. So that does scare me. And that's one of the things that I think mortgage professionals have to be really cautious about and educating people on it. I don't think we're going to allow HELOCs to go that high, meaning we're not going to offer stuff that goes up to 100% valuation. We're not going to offer things that can max somebody out, because the risk, we know the risk. We looked at what happened last time. So I don't think we're going to repeat those mistakes, but it is a concern.
At the end of the day, if you got a first on there and you have a big amount of equity in there, and then you tap into it through this, cash out refi, I guess, or a second,
Yep.
as the collateral goes down, the price goes down of the collateral. Let's say from a home goes from $1 million to 800,000. Now that second is in jeopardy, right? Isn't that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, somebody could look at that and just go, "I'm not going to pay this anymore," and we're gonna go down that route. And that happened a lot in 2008, but it wasn't. The whole market didn't crash because of strategic defaults. There were some strategic defaults, people that could make their payment and chose not to. But the market crashed because there were people that couldn't make their payment.
Right. That's right.
So
it can happen. It can start with the second.
it can start with the second, but it really can. It comes off. It's with employment. It comes down to employment. If somebody loses their job or their job's impacted because of a recession, then they can't make their payment anymore and they need to sell. Now, in most cases, if it's a minor recession, so to speak, then they just sell and they take their cash from their house and they go rent. In a major situation, the values of the houses are crashing at the same time this is happening, and they can't sell because it's not worth what they owe on it. And now, we're back and look exactly like 2008. But the reason I don't think it's going to happen like that again, the amount of equity that's been built up in the United States real estate right now is so high that we would have to have something just absolutely dramatic affect employment at a national level. And we'd have to see that pull housing prices down from the highest peak we've had it. It would be a very intense experience for that to happen.
I agree with you. In 2008, what happened was there were a lot of people that couldn't afford to pay. They got houses, and there was an oversupply of houses. So those two things happen at once. That's and that whole house of cards came tumble down. This is very different. I think that's why everyone's confused about it. There's so much equity in the homes. The savings rates are at all times high.
Yes.
But rates are ticking up. So, we created these asset bubbles, whether it's in the stock market, crypto market, real estate market, it doesn't really matter. They've all been created through a lot of cash. And now they're just adjusting. I don't really see a big overcorrection of real estate personally. I mean, I'm seeing issues on the commercial side because of the interest rates, but for single family, we need more inventory. We don't want it to be a seller's market.
No.
These balances are good. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I'm kind of an eternal optimist, and I try not to be like, everything's great all the time. But to me, this feels a lot more like a normalization.
Yeah.
Like we need think of this just as an example, right? So the mortgage industry pre-COVID was about a $2.5 trillion industry. Through 2020 and 2021, we ballooned to a $4.3 trillion industry. That's not normal, and that's not healthy. Now, there's wealth to be made there, and lots of things that are there, but you just look at that and go, that's so we're collapsing back now to about a 2.5, maybe even a $2 trillion market, which is still, in the history of mortgage markets, $2 trillion mortgage market is really healthy for the United States.
Well, I think you have a lot of people, they missed out in 2008, right? Because they lost their house or they sat on the sidelines, and they kind of saw what happened from 2008 into 2019 and how they kind of missed some good buying opportunities. So I think now with social media, you have everyone's an expert, right? And everything's going to just crash down, and this is your next big chance, and it's going to be another 2008 all over again. It's like they've never really, we've never had an online recession before, right? Just a normal slowing. And I was reading some comments today, and somebody said, the Phoenix market inventory's tripled. And somebody said, instead of a 10-day housing supply, we now have a 30-day housing supply, but we still need a 6-month housing supply to get us back to pre-pandemic levels. So,
good for you.
It's kind of funny when you look at that kind of stuff.
Good. You're right. That's exactly right. The narrative.
You're so right. It's the normalization. Mm-hmm. And so you get the headlines because they want to sell clicks or whatever they want to sell. So they're inflaming the reality that you went from 1 day to 30 days, thank God. And now we need to get back to 4 to 5 months, 6 months. And it's like, guys, stop freaking everyone out. This is healthy. We need more supply to come back. We need some people to sell their houses And you know, if it happens through their economic hardships, that's sad personally if I knew them, but like it opens up supply.
What do you think about inflation, and what is inflation doing to your industry?
Well, it crushes affordability because we qualify people on debt to income. So we look at their overall debt and we look at their income, and then we use that math to qualify them on what they can afford. And just because they can afford something doesn't mean they should do that deal, by the way. Just because they can afford it and the government says we'll buy this loan doesn't mean you should do it. But that's one of the key indicators of how you get a mortgage. Well, with inflation and the cost of the world just rising, even though they qualify, they go, but all my other life expenses have gone up through the roof now, and I'm not comfortable anymore with this payment.
Yeah.
So that's what pulls buyers out of the market, which is okay. It's some buyers leaving is probably okay right now, but it's terrible overall because it just crushes the ability for people to buy homes.
What advice would you give somebody? Okay, we're definitely heading into a recession, that's for sure. It pretty much looks like, if we're not there already. What would you tell them to do so that they don't get in a position to where they're going to lose whatever it is they have?
You know, I know, Ken, you'd agree with me on this. It's a highly personal decision on whether to make a big financial move. But the historical reality of home ownership in America has made generational wealth for families for decades. And owning things long-term, not as an investment necessarily, but as a place to raise your family and a place to live in a community and invest, has so many benefits to the community, to your own wealth, to your family, that I think it far outweighs the risk. And so I always land kind of first and foremost on, is this the place you want to live? And everyone's different, but is this the place you're going to, I'll give you a personal example. So I bought in the peak of the market in 2006. And I was newly married, and we bought a house at the highest part of the market in 2006 in Orange County, and the market crashed. And all of the money that I put in as a down payment was wiped out, and the equity position was wiped out. I lived in that house for 14 years. I raised my kids there, brought them home from the hospital there, and I just moved in November last year, but I loved that house, and and by the way, when I finally moved, my equity was back. I sold it I got a lot of money and did the thing. So for me, I'm not trying to flip that house. For me, that was the best decision I could have ever made. I loved living there. And for the quality of life and for what it meant from us after 14 years of living there, we did great. So I think that everyone has to kind of go deep on that personal perspective. But the only thing I would add to it right now, as we look at a recession coming out, is job stability. If you can see the recession impacting your job where you're not going to be in a place where you can afford your mortgage anymore, putting all your money into that house and risking that it might not come back is something that you got to be very thoughtful about. But if you're in a position where of enough confidence to say, my job's secure enough where I can be very comfortable, I don't think I'm going to get wiped out, then I think it's always a good time to buy and invest in yourself in real estate.